But God was already at work in Noel's heart. Not long after, in desperation, he agreed to go to church with Coral.
So we went to church, and I saw people, greeting each other and hugging each other, and I felt really insecure in this whole, amongst these people, these believers. And so I'm making all these sort of comments and was telling to behave myself, and they started singing this hymn or this chorus, I can't remember which. Well, then suddenly my whole body locked up, solid. It's like my whole body went into muscular spasm. I remember thinking to myself, is this it? Am I going? Perhaps I shouldn't have said those things, I'm really in trouble here. And as my body locked up, I just felt this heat come upon me, and just this heat just fed through my body over and over and over. I thought, what on earth's going on? And this heat's pushing through and pushing through. And then it's very hard to verbalise the next bit, except to say, that as this was all gone, it was like some weight, something just lifted from me. And I felt this peace come upon my life. But a peace I'd never known in my life. It's just unexplainable. And it was at that point I just knew it was God. I just knew it was God. I just knew it was God. And I don't really remember how long that lasted, except to say when I sat down, I felt absolutely wonderful. And I went home, I felt wonderful. And I woke up the next morning and I felt wonderful. And then I realised the next morning I woke up, I hadn't had a nightmare. And that God had healed me and taken all these nightmares away. So that was the start of a healing process. It's amazing. It's like God started to work on this mess and started to heal and restore me. And he took things away bit by bit by bit by bit. But it was a process, and it was a process that took years. Forgiveness was a real battle for me. It's just something I didn't want to give up, because that was what I had to hold on to, and so that's what I took to God many, many times.
The things that he found hard in his own character, that he struggled with, just gradually changed over the years, till I'm married to the most amazing man now, and God has blessed me in so many ways just to be his wife.
This is a school, right?
I think from the start, any journalist has got to have a healthy scepticism. You don't go in there and think he's definitely innocent. You don't go in there and think he's definitely guilty. You'd like to find out.
14 years after the event, new evidence from a police supergrass prompted the police to reopen the Noel Fellowes case.
And the police supergrass was talking about armed robberies, and this one was a peripheral case.
Raise!
The name of the supergrass was Lenny Pilot. Whilst confessing to the police, he let slip a comment that was going to shatter the entire case against Noel Fellowes.
It was just a one-off comment he made about, there was a guy who died up near Morecambe somewhere, and they said some guy did it, and he didn't. I know who did do it. The trouble was that here was a police informer who'd come on the scene all these years later and said, it wasn't him, he's completely in the clear. It was my two buddies, and that's how the whole story began.
I remember kneeling beside the bed, and Coral was the other side of the bed, and Coral said, how do you pray? And I said, well, I don't know how you pray. I think you just put your hands together and you just talk to God. And that very first night I said to God, I've already been vindicated before you. I want to be vindicated before man in my own lifetime. And that was my prayer. Well, ever since I stopped having nightmares, I never dream. It's like it goes night and you wake up the next morning. And so having this dream, I dreamt that two men came to the door. I knocked at the door and they opened the door and they handed me a newspaper. And I remember waking up one morning and telling Coral about this vivid dream I had, and Coral just said to me, well, that's nice, And I thought, well, it's strange, I should have a dream like that.
Meanwhile, Bob Westerdale had been searching for Noel and finally caught up with him in the south of England.
So we drove down, plastered along the side of the van's Lancashire Evening Post, most unprofessional, but we found where he lived, and then we found ourselves sat outside there wondering how best to tackle this.
It was about 11 o'clock at night, I seem to recall, and I thought it's very late for somebody to be knocking on the door, so I went up and opened the door, and there were two men at the door.
And I said to him, I'm Bob Westerdale, this is Terry Bromley, we're from the Lancashire Evening Post. We've come to talk to you about the death of Harold Parkinson.
And handed me a newspaper, And as he hands me the newspaper, I recall this dream. It was just like this dream had come into real life. And I said to them, come in. I said, you're messengers from God. And they said, what?
And it absolutely floored me, that, because he didn't know I was coming.
And so that was, the dream. And the newspaper said, the headlines in the newspaper said, police turn up new evidence on old killing. That was my prayer, day in, day out, year in, year out. It's because that, ultimately, I wanted to be set free, and I wanted the world to know that I was innocent.
Noel's joy was so overwhelming that it was infectious. You couldn't help but be thrilled for him.
Following the evidence from Lenny Pilot, Noel was granted the right to appeal against the judgment pronounced against him 14 years earlier.
The Crown, who of course were the agency which convicted him all those years on, stood up and very briefly said that they would not compete this case, which was their way, I suppose, of saying, oh, sorry, mate, we got it wrong.
You can imagine as I walked out of that courtroom, the top judge, the top court in the land, and I was on cloud about 180, because it was finished, it was over, my name had been cleared, I'd been vindicated before man.
They should have said, Keith Noel Fellowes, we got this wrong, we apologise. We'll never be able to make this up to you, but we just want you to know that we now accept everything that you say is correct. They didn't do that. They just sort of perfunctorily went through it, and he's out the door.
And I remember every part of the media was there, all the people from Fleet Street and BBC and ITV and all the cameras and all the microphones, and sue the police, sue the courts, sue the judiciary, all this stuff that was going on, sue. And it was that moment in time, spontaneously, I said, I've forgiven them. This pregnant silence goes amongst the press, which was a miracle in its own sense. And it was at that moment in time I realised the incredible work God had done in my life. I remember thinking to myself, where did all the hatred go? Where did all the embitterment go? Where did all the rejection go? Where did all the injustice, where did it all go? And yet God had worked all of that out of my life. But more importantly, where did all that unforgiveness go?
He'd been very badly wronged by this country, and it was put right. Belatedly, but it was put right, and he took it in good grace.
When the nightmare was finally over, Noel decided to write a book about his experience.
During the research for the book, we're in his kitchen, on his kitchen table with an enormous amount of documents spread out, and I picked up some stuff and I said to him, Noel, these are these taxi records then? So he went, oh yeah. I said, no, these are the taxi records. And all of a sudden we realised that the information that would have acquitted him had been part of the bundle of documents that was available to that court. So there you have it. The documents that would have absolved him of any blame were there. It was just chosen not to be produced to that jury.
As I'm talking to you now, it's like talking about a stranger. Did that really happen in my life? I don't remember the pain of it. I don't remember all those emotions of it. It's like we've moved on from there.
Noel Fellowes and his wife Coral have set up the charity Bridges International, which specialises in helping the families of prisoners, people with addictions and other life-controlling problems.
All we wanted to do is really take this good news, this practical good news of Jesus Christ, to the broken, to the disenfranchised, to the hurting, to all that fabric of society that feel it's been rubbished, because for our lives, really, our lives were rubbished, and God took this rubbish and recycled it and made it into something worthwhile. So in God, nothing is impossible, because we're living testimonies to his intervention and his building and restoring this wasted life into something that's really precious.